Well, the Colorado man accused of murdering his fiancée is set to make a court appearance on Monday. Patrick Frazee is suspected in the disappearance and presumed death of 29-year-old Kelsey Barreth. She's been missing since Thanksgiving. And the two share a one-year-old daughter who is currently in temporary custody with Kelsey's parents. Prosecutors are expected to move ahead with charges despite not recovering Kelsey's body. Let's bring in our legal panel to talk this one through. Trial attorney Rachel Self and defense attorney and former prosecutor Nicole DeBoard. Thank you both for being here. It really is such a heartbreaking case when you look at the face of both the missing mother and her little girl. Rachel, I want to start with you. With all that we know so far, where do prosecutors go with their case? You know, the father of the child has been charged on suspicion of murder, but no body. Her phone is pinged in another state, which means we're dealing with the state line issues. Where can this start?
Well, prosecutors are utilizing various agencies to work together, and apparently all of the agencies, interstate agencies and federal agencies and local agencies, are working very well together, and that's a first step. But anytime a prosecutor has a murder case and there's no body, it is an uphill battle. There is a principle in the law that you need to have a body of evidence, and in a murder case, the body of evidence is generally the body that has been murdered. But when you don't have that body, you need to develop a body of evidence that consists of circumstantial evidence and other evidence. In this case, it appears there are a lot of sworn statements and affidavits that are still under seal, along with cell phone records and other evidence that they're utilizing to build a body of evidence against Patrick Frazee. But it's going to be an uphill battle for them.
Nicole, how do you build a defense for Patrick Frazee? From what we know so far, there's a substantial amount of evidence in her home indicating a crime occurred there, that from local reports. He's also been charged with solicitation of murder. We don't know a ton about that part, but we are also hearing that 3 days after she was last seen alive, her cell phone was used to send text messages that she wouldn't be at work. So you've got that going. So when you look at all of that together, what do you think as a defense attorney?
So, as a defense attorney, a case where there is no body for forensic evidence investigation purposes, it's a little bit of an advantage, quite frankly. It can be very difficult for the state to prosecute a murder case when you don't know the manner and means of death. And one way that you determine that is to look at the body and determine how that body died, how that person died. And so the defense doesn't have that, and the state doesn't have that. So the state is going to have to prove what happened here without really knowing. It does sound like there's quite a lot of additional evidence in that house and maybe in these affidavits, but we don't know what that is yet. Law enforcement has kept that very close to the vest.
You know, Rachel, as investigators try to piece together all these clues that we're talking about here and find Kelsey, there's also the issue of custody of this little girl. Right now, the one-year-old little girl has been given to Kelsey's parents in a temporary custody case. How long can that stick? You know, there are going to be court appearances this week coming up, but still, how long can that happen?
Well, it'll happen until a judge orders differently. At this point, the temporary orders are in place. State agencies are also in place. And the best interest of the child is the standard that's applied here. So it's my understanding that on Thursday there's going to be another hearing. It's also my understanding that the paternal grandparents of Kaylee, Patrick Frazee's parents, are also interested in having custody of the child. So it's a very sad and tragic situation. And at this point, there's just so much that we don't know. There are so many unknowns. And it appears from the investigators' statements and from the DA's statements that there's a lot more that is in sealed information that we're not aware of yet. But one of the very dangerous things in a case like this is to rush to judgment. And I find it a little bit interesting that they've already charged Patrick Frazee with the murder. But with the solicitation charge, they might be trying to put pressure on the other person that they might know is already involved in this, and having him in custody helps them do that.
And we're watching, there's video that's playing on our screen right now of her at a grocery store on Thanksgiving. That is the last known public sighting of her, and her parents didn't report her missing for 10 days after that because they just didn't know what had been going on. Nicole, Patrick Frazee doesn't want publicity on this case and has asked to put a lid on media coverage. We've seen that move before. The decision for a gag order is expected to be made Monday. How big of an impact could it make if his request is granted? There's a lot of information out there already.
It is a problematic case for the defense because there has already been so much information out there. Lots of people have already made up their mind that this defendant is a bad actor. And so what the defense is trying to do is slow that train down a little bit and say, hey, let's hear about the evidence that the state actually has in court and make a decision based on the facts and the evidence as those things are presented there, and not based on what they hear out in the community. It can be very difficult to get a jury from a community where they have already been saturated with information that might not ever come into evidence in the case.
Right. Well, do we think there's any shot? I mean, I guess with them already charging him with suspicion of murder, them saying that there is evidence in the home that a crime occurred, it's hard to say at this point that we do want to hold out hope that she could be found. But, you know, things are not looking great for this. But we will continue to keep on it. Thank you so much to Rachel and to Nicole for bringing us your perspective today on this very tragic story. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for having us.